Hey Jeff, so since I can't get you on the phone, which is alright, I understand, I'll tell you a story. So 4th of July, uh, doing fireworks and stuff, right? And everybody's lighting off fireworks. Now usually, even though I'm deployed and explosions and all that stuff getting shot at, fireworks didn't really make me jump. Like, like I have a natural respect for the explosion, but, I never freaked out. But this year, like the fireworks were different. They were just piercing. It was like, Civil War gunshots going off and all kinds of stuff. So I noticed, and you know, and after that, I had a good buzz going. But after that, you know, like I had this wave of sobriety hit me, and I called it a night. I was like, all right, I'm completely sober now. It's kind of weird, so I'm gonna go home. Brought the kids home, finished watching a show, go out and check out the moon. And the moon is beaming like the sun. I mean, it's shining so bright compared to every single full moon in Afghanistan in the open desert with no lights anywhere, just paled in comparison. It was like the sun rays, coming down to my feet except for off of the moon. And so I'm up there just like staring at the moon, like, damn, that is beautiful. And then all of a sudden, I noticed like this big blanket, this long floating trail of black smoke coming basically from my dad's house, and it's coming right in front of the moon, and it's passing right in front of it. And the smoke is mixing with the clouds, and it's moving fast and violent, and like, it's very mesmerizing. So I'm staring at that now. I went from looking at the moon to looking at the clouds mixing with the smoke, and then all of a sudden they just paused. They went from moving really fast to just being dead stopped in their tracks in the perfect shape of a dragon. And so I'm like, okay, that's a dragon. That's a really good dragon. Like I could see all the details and the scales, and it was like a dragon, but it had like kind of like features of a lion almost, and something like you might see like over in like China, the way they draw them, but not quite. A little bit more sinister. It was fangs coming out the mouth. And I'm like, damn, that's a dragon. And I thought maybe I had a buzz I was kicking in or whatever. But as soon as that poofed away, it was like 7, 12 seconds later. It stayed perfectly still for that long, and then it poofed away. And as soon as that happened, it went away, and when it showed up, like the head was on the moon, exactly, and right in front of the moon, dead center, perfect. And then the woman appeared, and she was pregnant, and she was holding her belly, and she had a long dress, and it floated, and it looked like the rays from the moon looked like the sun, like clothing her, it was like shining through, and following all the silhouettes, and you could see even the outlines of her hands holding her belly. And like, pregnant woman and a dragon. Okay, now I'm like sucked in, right? And it keeps going, it keeps happening. These clouds are moving fast and violent, and then they stop into a picture, and the next one's a baby, up in the high right above the moon and to the right. And then right after that was the woman, ascending. But I think maybe the snake came after. But what happened was I paused. I was like, I know that story, and I went and looked in my Bible in chapter 12 in Revelations, and there it is. I cheated. I looked on the phone first. Pregnant woman and a dragon, and it says chapter 12. So I go back out. I'm like, all right, God, what else you got? And it just started back up, right? I started seeing all these images again, and and it was a snake that appeared, exactly where the dragon was at, same size, except for it was a serpent. It was like rounded off head kind of. And then and I saw this the woman, it looked like she was hiding behind a bush, and it looked like I saw these four monsters, but I couldn't really recognize them. Right? I'm keeping track of all the stuff I'm seeing, and I'm like, man, I don't want to just jump the gun on looking at what I'm looking at, and thinking. So I didn't recognize them. I was like, that could be a monster, but I'm not gonna write it down. But then I definitely saw a guy in the back of a chariot, And he's got horses just carrying him up and to the right. And then from the right I saw this big giant Egyptian pharaoh looking dude, and it was sinister and dark and ominous, right? And that's coming over. But then after that, I saw, I actually saw like a lion and an eagle protecting like where the baby, if they were, everything appeared on its own, but it's like the placement of it was significant in the way that it was all happening. And but then I saw this blindfolded man, right where the pregnant woman was at. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, man, that feels like Jesus. And then after that, I saw the blindfolded man, and you could see the wrinkles in the blindfold and everything in his jawline. And it didn't stretch all the way out like the dress did on the woman. It just showed that prominent feature where he's laying down, and you could see the blindfold over his eyes and his nose and his mouth and his jaw and his hair and everything hanging down. And just immediately I was like, huh, that seems like Jesus. And then right after that, I saw a cave. And what it was a perfect equilateral triangle around the moon, with the moon dead center in the middle. And for some reason, it just like the light coming out of the cave, kind of like Jesus coming out of the cave on the third day. And I was like, all right, I'm tracking, I'm following the story. And then after that, the hand of God, man, the hand of God, it was like cut off at the wrist, but it was a giant hand, and it was just like bigger than all the other images. It just came underneath and just like under everything. And it, and then it stopped, and I was like, all right, what does that mean? So I go and I start reading again. I spent the rest of the night reading, like all night. And I started reading in chapter 5, and I'm reading 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and there's nothing. I couldn't find anything that I saw in the clouds in those chapters. But then I started reading chapter 12, and it was all in chapter 12, like the whole thing. I just read that one little part before, but everything was in there. And so I was like, I wonder why, I'm reading in chapter 5, and I read beyond it, and but everything, the bulk of everything was in chapter 12. And so weeks and weeks later, man, like I've told a couple people about this, but weeks and weeks later, I'm talking to my mom, and I just start the story, like talking about the moon. I didn't get into any details, and she stops me. She's like, Michael, I saw 7 angels. And I'm like, all right, keep going, tell me more. Yeah, and she thought I was going to call her crazy or something like that. Who knows? But then she starts describing it. It's like she could recognize their faces, and she would never forget them. And like they were pure white, but you could still see every wrinkle and every hair. And I was like, Mom, it's funny you say that, because, when I was trying to find what I was looking for, I started reading in chapter 5. And chapters 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 are all about the 7 angels. And she just called, I just talked to her, and she's talking about 7 angels, and she's saying that it happened before the 4th of July, so, to me, that gives us like a timeline of where we're at and what's going on. But you get closer to like chapter 19, it's Jesus coming back. So I'm like going through this journey. I had like the grasshoppers, appear like locusts, and they were covering all my chairs, except for the one I was sitting in. I had a turtle come up and lay eggs right next to my house. I had a raven inside of my garage, like just staring at me, and all kinds of stuff. Animals been acting weird, so anyways, I'm trying to figure it out. I'm reading this, I'm reading that, and I have this like probably like several weeks, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, long enough for me to notice and be like, man, I haven't had any dreams in a long time. And so like I noticed, and I remember noticing, I'm like, I haven't had any dreams. And then I had this crazy dream, like vivid, and it was, we were all out on the horizon of the earth, and you could see the sun and the moon at the same time, and everything was shining. It was like a normal day, but you could see the sun and the moon at the same time, and then they both stopped shining, and everything was dark, and like you could still see like kind of the shape of everything, but it was dark. It was like real dark, and it was just like the dream that was making it still outline, but it was supposed to be like really dark. And then all of a sudden, from like the other side of the universe, a different light came on, and it shined and it lit up everything. It lit up the sun, it lit up the moon, it lit up the earth. You could see all the earth. You could see into the valleys and in the cities, and you could see like a lot more than normally what you see. Because, I think the earth is bigger than what they say, perhaps. But at least it wasn't a dream. But then you look up and I could see the planets, I could see Mars and Jupiter and Saturn, which that lines up with the Bethlehem star thing that's going on today or earlier today. And then I could see the whole Milky Way, every little bit of it, every little star and detail and swirl and color. And then around the Milky Way and around our planet and around everything, there was this giant glass ball. And for some reason in the dream, I was like, oh yeah, the firmament, and it was like, that makes perfect sense, firmament. And then beyond that, you could see all the other galaxies and the rest of the universe, and it was just endless, and it just kept going. But everything was lit up, and you could see everything. And, at the very end of all that was where the light was coming from. And, it led me to, like, Revelations 19, and it led me to Isaiah 53. And I didn't know about Isaiah 53. I didn't read it before. I never got to that verse. But when I was reading it, I was like, this feels like it's talking about me specifically. I mean, like, to a T. Every little bit of it. It's like every other verse was literal. And then every other verse from that was like, symbolically. And it was like it lined up perfectly. But of course I go and actually look it up. It's talking about Jesus, and like the Jews, they don't even read that one anymore because it's talking about Jesus. And some Jews that don't even know what it is. But so then that leads me back to like Jesus coming back and this and that. But it gets deeper, man. It gets deeper than that. But I have to go into it with you because it's like it really happened. It's like several weeks after these impossible, coincidences. And not coincidences, man, like literally like throwing up the Bible and being like, all right, God, which page? And an exact verse, about, what I was dreaming. And then also when I had that dream about the whole universe and the light, I actually compared that to the book of Genesis and to the book of Revelations, right? And it was accurate. It was literally accurate. Like there were no technical like faults whatsoever. It was like, the firmament and where it was located, and the way that everything was said, and it's like it lined up exactly. And it was like the same thing with the dragon and the woman and the clouds. And then I found this other thing. I don't remember where it was at. Actually, I could probably look it up on my phone, but it was they're talking about Moses and saying like Moses, he's different. He's not like the other guys. But let me see. Let me grab this real quick. And it says, like, and hear my words, if there be a prophet among you, I, the Lord, will make myself known unto him in a vision, and will speak unto him in a dream. And it's like these two things happen, right? And these scriptures are lining up exactly with what I was talking about in whatever day, in whatever random flip of the Bible that happened. And, it's basically because I called out and I asked for help, and I asked somebody else. I was like, hey, man, I've never like felt, like when people say they get baptized and they feel it, like I never felt it. And because I tried to get baptized when I was a little baby, you get christened or whatever. And then when I was working at the Johnny's Pizza, a friend tried to baptize me. I was like, I don't feel that. I did it again. So I asked my friend, I was like, Mike, can you say a prayer for me and just like so I can get baptized or some shit, because I just like don't feel like I'm baptized yet. And I'm telling you, it gets deeper. The story gets more. But what happened with those clouds, man, at the very end of that was the feeling of peace, because it was like finally accepting and like finally trying to follow the rules. And the feeling of peace is what I got from it. And I've never felt it before my whole life. My whole life, as far as I can remember, I never felt what that felt like. um, and it's like I see people who are happy and peaceful and this and that, but I didn't know what it was until this night of my 34th year on this planet. And give me a call, man. 239-628-6024. I'm going to finish the story.